Hello dear viewer, and thank you for joining me on day 34 of reading the Bible together. Today we are reading Exodus chapter 20 and 21 from the Old Testament, as well as Matthew chapter 21 verse 1 to 22 from the New Testament. Let's start. Exodus chapter 20, the 10 Commandments. God spoke, and these were his words. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, where you were slaves. Worship no God but me. Do not make for yourselves images of anything in heaven, or on earth, or in the water under the earth. Do not bow down to any idol or worship it, because I am the Lord your God, and I tolerate no rivals. I bring punishment on those who hate me, and on their descendants down to the third and fourth generation. But I show my love to thousands of generations of those who love me and obey my laws. Do not use my name for evil purposes, for I, the Lord your God, will punish anyone who misuses my name. Observe the Sabbath and keep it holy. You have 6 days in which to do your work, but the 7th day is a day of rest, dedicated to me. On that day no one is to work, neither you, your children, your slaves, your animals, nor the foreigners who live in your country. In 6 days I, the Lord, made the earth, the sky, the seas, and everything in them. But on the 7th day I rested. That is why I, the Lord, blessed the Sabbath and made it holy. Respect your father and your mother, so that you may live a long time in the land that I am giving you. Do not commit murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not accuse anyone falsely. Do not desire another man's house. Do not desire his wife, his slaves, his cattle, his donkeys, or anything else that he owns. The people's fear. When the people heard the thunder and the trumpet blast, and saw the lightning and the smoking mountain, they trembled with fear and stood a long way off. They said to Moses, "If you speak to us, we will listen. But we are afraid that if God speaks to us, we will die." Moses replied, "Don't be afraid. God has only come to test you and make you keep on obeying him, so that you will not sin." But the people continued to stand a long way off, and only Moses went near the dark cloud where God was. Laws about altars. The Lord commanded Moses to tell the Israelites, "You have seen how I, the Lord, have spoken to you from heaven. Do not make for yourselves gods of silver or gold to be worshipped in addition to me. Make an altar of earth for me, and on it sacrifice your sheep and your cattle as offerings to be completely burned, and as fellowship offerings. In every place that I set aside for you to worship me, I will come to you and bless you. If you make an altar of stone for me, do not build it out of cut stones, because when you use a chisel on stones, you make them unfit for my use. Do not build an altar for me with steps leading up to it. If you do, you will expose yourselves as you go up the steps." Exodus chapter 21, the treatment of slaves. Give the Israelites the following laws. If you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve you for 6 years. In the 7th year he is to be set free, without having to pay anything. If he was unmarried when he became your slave, he is not to take a wife with him when he leaves. But if he was married when he became your slave, he may take his wife with him. If his master gave him a wife and she bore him sons or daughters, the woman and her children belong to the master, and the man is to leave by himself. But if the slave declares that he loves his master, his wife, and his children, and does not want to be set free, then his master shall take him to the place of worship. There he is to make him stand against the door or the doorpost, and put a hole through his ear. Then he will be his slave for life. If a man sells his daughter as a slave, she is not to be set free, as male slaves are. If she is sold to someone who intends to make her his wife, but he doesn't like her, then she is to be sold back to her father. Her master cannot sell her to foreigners, because he has treated her unfairly. If a man buys a female slave to give to his son, he is to treat her like a daughter. If a man takes a second wife, he must continue to give his first wife the same amount of food and clothing and the same rights that she had before. If he does not fulfill these duties to her, he must set her free and not receive any payment. Laws about violent acts. Whoever hits someone and kills him is to be put to death. But if it was an accident and he did not mean to kill him, he can escape to a place which I will choose for you, and there he will be safe. But when someone gets angry and deliberately kills someone else, he is to be put to death, even if he has run to my altar for safety. Whoever hits his father or his mother is to be put to death. Whoever kidnaps someone, either to sell him or to keep him as a slave, is to be put to death. Whoever curses his father or his mother is to be put to death. If there is a fight and someone hits someone else with a stone or with his fist, but does not kill him, he is not to be punished. If the one who was hit has to stay in bed, but later is able to get up and walk outside with the help of a cane, the one who hit him is to pay for his lost time and take care of him until he gets well. If a slave owner takes a stick and beats his slave, whether male or female, and the slave dies on the spot, the owner is to be punished. But if the slave does not die for a day or two, the master is not to be punished. The loss of his property is punishment enough. If some men are fighting and hurt a pregnant woman so that she loses her child, but she is not injured in any other way, the one who hurt her is to be fined whatever amount the woman's husband demands, subject to the approval of the judges. But if the woman herself is injured, the punishment shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. If someone hits his male or female slave in the eye and puts it out, he is to free the slave as payment for the eye. If he knocks out a tooth, he is to free the slave as payment for the tooth. The responsibility of owners. If a bull gores someone to death, it is to be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten, but its owner is not to be punished. But if the bull had been in the habit of attacking people, and its owner had been warned, but did not keep it penned up, then if it gores someone to death, it is to be stoned, and its owner is to be put to death also. However, if the owner is allowed to pay a fine to save his life, he must pay the full amount required. If the bull kills a boy or a girl, the same rule applies. If the bull kills a male or female slave, its owner shall pay the owner of the slave 30 pieces of silver, and the bull shall be stoned to death. If someone takes the cover off a pit, or if he digs one and does not cover it, and a bull or a donkey falls into it, he must pay for the animal. He is to pay the money to the owner and may keep the dead animal. If someone's bull kills someone else's bull, the two of them shall sell the live bull and divide the money. They shall also divide up the meat from the dead animal. But if it was known that the bull had been in the habit of attacking and its owner did not keep it penned up, he must make good the loss by giving the other man a live bull, but he may keep the dead animal. Please feel free to pause the video here for time to reflect on what we have read. Let's continue. Matthew chapter 21, verse 1 to 22. The triumphant entry into Jerusalem. As Jesus and his disciples approached Jerusalem, they came to Bethphage at the Mount of Olives. There Jesus sent 2 of the disciples on ahead with these instructions: Go to the village there ahead of you, and at once you will find a donkey tied up with her colt beside her. Untie them and bring them to me. And if anyone says anything, tell them, the master needs them, and then he will let them go at once. This happened in order to make come true what the prophet had said. Tell the city of Zion, Look, your king is coming to you. He is humble and rides on a donkey, and on a colt, the foal of a donkey. So the disciples went and did what Jesus had told them to do. They brought the donkey and the colt, threw their cloaks over them, and Jesus got on. A large crowd of people spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. The crowds walking in front of Jesus and those walking behind began to shout, "Praise to David's son! God bless him who comes in the name of the Lord! Praise be to God!" When Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was thrown into uproar. "Who is he?" the people asked. "This is the prophet Jesus from Nazareth in Galilee," the crowds answered. Jesus goes to the temple. Jesus went into the temple and drove out all those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the stools of those who sold pigeons, and said to them, "It is written in the scriptures that God said, 'My temple will be called a house of prayer,' but you are making it a hideout for thieves." The blind and the crippled came to him in the temple, and he healed them. The chief priests and the teachers of the law became angry when they saw the wonderful things he was doing, and the children shouting in the temple, "Praise to David's son." So they asked Jesus, "Do you hear what they are saying?" "Indeed I do," answered Jesus. "Haven't you ever read this scripture? You have trained children and babies to offer perfect praise." Jesus left them and went out of the city to Bethany, where he spent the night. Jesus curses the fig tree. On his way back to the city early next morning, Jesus was hungry. He saw a fig tree by the side of the road and went to it, but found nothing on it except leaves. So he said to the tree, "You will never again bear fruit." At once the fig tree dried up. The disciples saw this and were astounded. "How did the fig tree dry up so quickly?" they asked. Jesus answered, "I assure you that if you believe and do not doubt, you will be able to do what I have done to this fig tree. And not only this, but you will even be able to say to this hill, 'Get up and throw yourself into the sea,' and it will. If you believe, you will receive whatever you ask for in prayer." Please feel free to pause the video here for time to reflect on what we have read. That's it for today, and I hope that you'll join me in the next video. Wishing you a graceful morning, day, or evening.